Nothing to Prove, written by Ink in My Heart and on the Page, and read for you by Eleanor Elizabeth. Summary. Of all the powers that Peter had received from the spider bite, he would have to say that superhearing was the worst. Peter really liked Mr. Stark's new house. It was quiet, peaceful, and relaxing. Not something that Peter would have associated with his mentor, but Peter thought it was good for the man. In the 5 years that Peter had been gone, and that was something Peter was still struggling to wrap his mind around, his mentor had changed quite a bit. Physically, the man had a few more grey hairs than Peter had last remembered seeing, and there was a little extra padding around his waist, but Peter had seen the emotional change. He was a lot softer than he used to be, a distinct dad vibe coming off the man. Which Peter supposed was true, since Tony now had a little girl, Morgan, who, when she'd first seen Peter, had immediately wrapped in a hug and declared that she was his little sister. This had nearly knocked Peter off his feet, and before he could splutter out a response, Tony had said, "Yep, that's right, Mo, this is your big brother," and had chuckled when Morgan dragged Peter towards the house, excited to show him everything, leaving Peter's head still spinning a day later. Peter adored Morgan. She was bright and clever, just like her parents, and was a lot of fun and seemed to hang off Peter every chance she got, and while he was a little nervous to ask Tony what exactly he had meant, he loved the idea of being a big brother to Morgan. They had just finished an after-dinner swim at the lake, both Peter and Morgan wearing floaties, because despite the fact that Peter was Spider-Man, he still wasn't the strongest of swimmers, and needed to have lessons, and Peter was chilling on the deck while Tony took Morgan back to the house to get ready for bed. Peter wasn't the only one at the lake house. The Avengers had all spread out on the front lawn in numerous chairs. The team had arrived sporadically across the afternoon, bringing dishes along with them, and they ended up having a barbecue for dinner, spread out across the front lawn. It was the first time the team had all been together again since the battle with Thanos, and the name still sent a shiver down Peter's spine. Even Carol, whose arm was still in a sling from when she'd snapped Thanos and his army out of existence, had come. Laughter from the lawn had Peter focusing his hearing and dragging his gaze away from the setting sun. All right, I've got a scar to show you," Clint said. Peter heard rustling, too lazy to turn and watch. "Check this out. Got this one on a mission in Vietnam." "That's barely a scar," Sam snorted. "Hey, I got this surfing down a landslide," Clint argued. "You guys aren't going to start sharing war stories, are you?" Bruce asked hesitantly. "Good idea, Bruce," Thor boomed. "I can regale you with the many tales of my heroic battles." "Mine are classified," Natasha said, making Peter shiver with excitement. "If we're going to do this, then we should invite Peter," Carol said. "I'm sure he has some stories too." At his name, Peter almost went to turn around, but paused when he heard Clint speak up. "You mean so he can tell us about the old ladies he's helped cross the road?" There was a smattering of laughter, and Peter's heart dropped in his chest, his legs that were dangling in the water still, and he stared at his rippling reflection. "Junior hasn't done anything besides Germany," Sam added. "What could he add?" "Peter could add a lot," Rhodey said sharply. Peter's heart gave a small tumble in his chest. "Have you forgotten how he webbed you up in Germany?" Rhodey asked coolly. "He's an enhanced individual with a knack for finding trouble. Peter's done a lot more than you think." "You're right," Clint said, but Peter could hear the teasing note in his voice. "We forgot that he's Stark's personal intern. I'm sure he could tell us some wacky stories about what Stark's made him do." More laughter followed Clint's words, and Peter hunched his shoulders, trying to block them out, but it was too late. The laughter and words had already twisted their way into his heart, making his stomach churn and his eyes prick with tears. His insecurities came rushing to the surface, his hands twisting in the old band t-shirt that belonged to Tony. "Clint," Rhodey said firmly, "stop. Peter has done amazing things. Stop belittling that." "It's just some light-hearted teasing," Wanda said. "It's not like he can hear us from all the way down there." "Yes, he can," Rhodey said. Everyone fell silent, and Peter hunched over further when he could feel everyone's eyes on him. "Oh shit," Clint muttered. Forgot he had super hearing. Peter didn't know what to do. He could feel everyone's gaze on him, making his skin prickle and the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. His spider senses screamed at him to move, but a part of Peter was too embarrassed. If he got up, he would have to pass them to get into the house, and Peter couldn't face them. Not after what they thought of him. Hearing the mechanical whir of Rhodey's braces, Peter contemplated if he had enough strength to swim across the lake. The floaties he'd been wearing with Morgan were only a few feet away, and he was sure he could get them on before Rhodey arrived. A wave of embarrassment that he couldn't even swim properly had a tear rolling down his cheek and kept him firmly planted on the decking. The sound of Rhodey's braces whirred as he crouched down behind Peter, a heavy hand landing on his shoulder and squeezing tightly. "Don't listen to those idiots, Peter." "They're right," Peter mumbled, another tear slipping down his cheek. "No, they're not," Rhodey said firmly. "You've done incredible things, Peter. You and I both know that. They just haven't seen what you can do." "But—" Peter tried to protest, but Rhodey wasn't having any of it. "No," Rhodey cut him off. "What you did, staying on that donut ship, was beyond brave. Tony told me what you did up there, how proud he was of you. He couldn't have done any of it without you." "I died, though," Peter whispered heavily. Rhodey's fingers tightened against his shoulder. "That wasn't your fault, Pete. And from what Tony told me, you fought against it." Peter shivered as he remembered his body feeling weird, the way he tasted ash in his mouth and then saw his body falling apart before his eyes. He tried to stay for Mr. Stark, to not leave him, but he failed anyway. "It was luck of the draw, Pete," Rhodey continued. "There isn't anything you could have done against it." "Clint was right," Peter muttered, his insecurities about not being good enough still overpowering him. "I help people with directions. It's not very hero-like." Rhodey scoffed. "Do you know how much crime went up in Queens while you were gone?" Peter said nothing, staring at his feet as they disappeared into the water. "You've done a hell of a lot more than you think," Rhodey said. "So they aren't the big missions like those idiots were bragging about. You look after the little guy every day. That's more than any of them can say. You're a hero. To Queens, to your aunt, to me, to Tony, and to so many more people." More tears spilled down Peter's cheeks at Rhodey's words, the voices in his head telling him he wasn't good enough to be Spider-Man starting to quiet down. There was still a lingering sense of unworthiness, though, something he had always battled with. "I'd rather have you in my corner than any of those guys," Rhodey continued. "Me too." Peter jumped, having not even heard Tony approach the dock. He looked up, eyes wide, as he saw Tony hovering behind them, hands shoved in his pockets. His face was soft and open, but Peter could see the hidden anger along his tight jawline. Peter scrambled to his feet, biting his lip nervously and tugging on the hem of his shirt. He didn't want Tony to think him weak, and his cheeks flushed red. "Everything Rhodey said is true, kid," Tony said, stepping closer and pulling his hands from his pockets. "And he's the smartest person I know, other than you." "But," Peter tried to protest again. "Come here, kid." Tony cut him off, pulling Peter into a tight hug. Peter went willingly, curling up into the warmth that was Tony and inhaling the familiar scent. He buried his face into Tony's shoulder, arms coming to wrap around his waist. "You're my hero, Peter," Tony said firmly. "I know that you're feeling scared after what happened. We all are. You have nothing to prove to anyone, kid. You are a hero. I wish you believed in yourself the way that I do." Peter hugged Tony back tightly, heart tripping over the way that Tony pressed a firm kiss to the top of his head. "I love you, kiddo," Tony murmured against his curls. "You have no idea how good it feels to have you back."